I am here to discuss the so-called flying saucers.
We know now that in the early years of the 20th century, this world was being watched closely by intelligences greater than man's.
Did the CIA write Wind of Change by the Scorpions?
As humans busied themselves about the various concerns, they were scrutinized and studied.
Dr. Loeb, what percentage chance do you give it that you have indeed uncovered extraterrestrial or non-human technology?
With infinite complacence, people went about their affairs, yet across an immense ethereal gulf, intellects vast and unsympathetic threw their plans against us.
All of a sudden, a stick out of nowhere landed right in front of us, and there was no tree, nothing overhead. Something threw it at us.
Yeah. What's your hot take on Travis Taylor?
I've got an exclusive for you guys if you want it about the Alaska.
We do.
Okay.
Dr. Taylor was revealed to be the chief scientist of the UAP task force with the Pentagon.
All Things Unexplained.
So some of that, I think, sir, we'll save for closed session.
All right, Unexplained Ones, this is Dr. Mounce, and welcome back to All Things Unexplained. If you're in the chat, go ahead and say hello. Let us know you're here. We appreciate you joining us for a very special All Things Unexplained, because tonight we're live on YouTube, LinkedIn, and X, aka Twitter. And we're pulling a double feature tonight. So we've got two special episodes for you tonight. And I'm joined out of retirement.
Well, I was on here not too long ago.
Guess who's back? Smitty is back tonight. Smitty, welcome back.
It's good to be back. It's good to see everybody. Miss my All Thing Unexplained people.
Yeah, well, this is right up your wheelhouse tonight, because we got a special double feature where we'll be delving into the JFK files tonight. And Smitty is our in-house history expert.
I think it's so unbelievable that they open these files for the public to see. And this has been going on for the longest time. They begged people to do that. Finally, we get to see these. And there are a huge amount of files to look through.
Oh, that's right. It's basically impossible to look through all of them. But I'm proud of All Things Unexplained, because I feel like we made two significant discoveries here in the JFK files. And we've got our friend of the show, 2020 Defense and Tactical, joining us. Lee, thanks for joining us. Check out, Lee's been on the show, by the way. Smitty, were you on with Lee?
I believe so, yeah.
Yeah, and it's got a great book. We'll put that up in the chat, Lee, if you don't mind, a link to where everybody can check out your book. It's about a group of UAP crash retrieval team. It's a UAP crash retrieval team. It's a great book. And Lee also talks about his own triangular UAP experience in that book. And he's got a sequel on the way. So Lee, put that information in the chat for us, and we'll put it up on the screen for you. So Lee, thanks for joining us tonight, and everybody else all around the world. If you haven't already, I encourage you to check out our YouTube store. It's one of the best ways you can support the channel, but the best way to support the channel is by hitting the subscribe button on YouTube. If you're watching us on YouTube tonight, hit the subscribe button. Smitty, we're up to approximately 38,000 subscribers.
Unbelievable.
I'll never forget. And shout out to CJ. She couldn't join us tonight. But I'll never forget the very first episode we ever did. Right. It was on Bigfoot. Remember that?
It was.
And basically our only viewers, and it was for Con. So this was in 2020.
It was during COVID.
Yeah, during COVID. So all the cons, everything went online, right? And so we got invited to do Con, which was a novel concept, an online con at the time. I feel like it was pretty novel. And I mean, there were some great presentations. Like this one woman set up a camera outside her house, and she's like twirling bowling pins that are on fire while she's chanting or something. It was
pass on that.
It was pretty cool though. There was some innovative presentations, but we did a presentation on Bigfoot, and my children's books had just come out, and CJ's parents were the only people, so far as I know, that tuned in, and they were asking questions and kind of pretending that they weren't CJ's parents. And I loved one of their questions was, is Bigfoot affected by COVID?
That was pretty smart. Pretty intelligent.
And Lee, I don't know why it won't let you post the link, but just if you can post the title of there we go. There's the link. Hopefully people can click on that. And Lee, you might want to just Orbit. There it is, Orbit. I'll put it up on the screen. That's a long link there. Bottom line is go to Amazon, search for Orbit, and you'll find that book in there. It's a tremendous book. So subscribe on YouTube. Also, this will be on every audio podcast platform tomorrow. So if you wouldn't mind, wherever you listen to us on your podcast of choice player, go ahead and follow us. Click the 5 stars. If you scroll down under the show information, you'll see a link for 5 stars. And if you feel so inclined, give us a review, a great review, if you feel so inclined.
Preferably positive.
That's right. It really helps the show out and our metrics in defeating the algorithms that try to suppress the information that we're trying to put out there. And the sequel to Orbit Spectral will be out from Lee on July 4th, a very appropriate day for that to come out.
Yes.
Very appropriate. So, yeah, give us a follow on the podcast players of your choice. We really appreciate you. And you can also head out to our website, allthingsunexplained.com. It's a great place to see everything we've got going on. Great place to donate. You can also just donate to the show. All the monies you donate goes straight to the podcast, and we depend on the support of listeners like you. All right, so first up tonight, I want to introduce the file number. So we're not going to keep this secret or anything. And Smitty, I'm proud of All Things Unexplained because I feel like this is really quite the revelation that we discovered. This is file number 104-10326-10063. We call it the musician asset, and it involves a famous musician, personality, radio, television personality in Austria by the name of Walter Dutch. How should we pronounce that, Smitty? D-E-U-T-C-H.
Dutch, I think.
D-U-T-S-C-H. That's not in the file, but Smitty's going to get us started and tell us a little bit more about Walter.
And I tell you, the interesting thing about him and who we're going to talk about later is their jobs allowed them to move around from place to place. It gave them access to places that normal people, say I'm a teacher, which I am, I would just be going to different countries, but these have access. But he was an Austrian musicologist and folk music archivist, and he worked in Austrian radio and television. He had a big Austrian TV show that was very popular during that period of time. He ends up retiring there, served in World War II as a German soldier, captured by Allied forces, holds a POW in U.S. And he also said what I thought was very interesting is he was able to obviously interrogate people, and he interrogated a Nazi assassin who he hoped to get information from, but it said the U.S. had a burn on after the man, so the man fled and went back to Germany. But he basically, he explains a Cold War strategic role in intelligent battles between the East and the West. I think that's big. And I've always got into looking at a lot of this Cold War battles between the East and the West. It actually restructured our whole system of education because we had to feel like we had to beat the Russians in technology. So we restructured things in order to make more math, which I'm sure you liked because you were a math teacher, and more science. And so Those two things. I always define the Cold War as like two children almost, even though they were children with the power of nuclear capabilities that wanted to outdo each other. And so if one put a satellite in space, we had to put a man on the, they put a man in space first. Yuri Gagarin, we had to put a man on the moon. They did this, we had to do that. So back and forth. But I think Walter's secrecy of what he did could be well covered up by his influence in musical world.
Oh yeah. Well, I mean, you mentioned, right, like in World War II, he was captured by the U.S.
Mm-hmm.
Because so I feel like, that's the biggest clue. The interesting thing is, and I'm going to pull this file up here, Smitty. And basically this file, and if you Google the JFK files, it has a space where you can type in the file number you're looking for. And if you type this file number in with the dashes, 104-10326-10063, it will pull up the file I'm about to put on the screen here.
Right.
And let me get this up here. So essentially, this is a letter from a code-named asset in November 14th, 1995. Oh, I got to remove the other picture before I get that one up there. And here we go. And I'm going to try to make this as big as I can.
He moved to Austria twice, it says. 71 and 83.
Yeah, and he basically, became fully established in Austria. And here we've got this letter from him to the CIA, because in 95, they were talking about, revealing the names and a lot of these files that had been redacted for decades. And Walter was really worried about how this would affect his life. And by the way, I don't know if you mentioned this, Smitty, but Walter passed away, I believe, earlier this year. He was 101 years old.
101.
Yeah.
I know one thing. He was super concerned about that 2,000 square foot apartment. He mentions that on like several different things about how much it would cost him and how much it would be for him to have to restart. And really, so if he's writing this to the CIA, there's no real doubt that he was a CIA operative. I mean, what would be the point of this letter if he wasn't some sort of operative or something to that effect? Because he is really, really concerned about how it's going to affect his life if it gets out that he was actually part of this mission that was going on between the East and the West. I thought that was interesting.
Oh, yeah. Here on the last page, it says the subject would be endangered by Islamic groups here who have assassinated several, including one city councilman. Embassy gets threatening phone calls as foreigner. Subject denied Austrian pistol permit. Subject also endangered by former Nazi assassin and intel swindler he interrogated and broke 25 years ago, promising him secrecy, but U.S. Army put out burn notice forcing Nazi to move to Germany. So that's the thing about this letter, Smitty. He even wrote this letter under his code name, and here's his code name, and I think y'all can see this on the screen. It's out next to number 3. Ref Iden. That's REF, and the second name is IDEN. I would love to kind of decode the meaning behind this code name, because I feel like there's some meaning here to Ralph Iden. But Walter wrote this letter, and you see this a lot in the JFK files, as his pseudonym, Ralph Iden, or his secret identity, Ralph Iden. And so what we did, All Things Unexplained, we through our investigation, deduced that with Walter's timeline and Walter being basically the only famous musician, radio, TV personality of the correct age with the correct war service, he got into a POW situation, then he was released, and then poof. It makes a lot of sense, right, Smitty, that he is now a CIA asset.
Makes perfect sense. I'll tell you another thing that surprised me is how many Islamic terrorists he talks about. So we just mentioned, and being in Austria, he is, if you read this, he is really concerned, not just for the loss of his life as he knew it, but for the life, literal life. Like he's scared that he is going to be killed if people find this out. And he was 75 years old at the time. So the man goes on to live 26 more years. And so would you believe he was coerced or he volunteered for this role?
Well, that's a good question. And based on just the sheer number of JFK files I have read, and based on what we see today still happening, and I can't help but believe it happens to a higher degree today than it did in the 60s. I have to believe he was coerced, right? He's a POW. I'm not sure what they had over his head. But even at 75 years old, he's still a CIA asset.
Yep.
He's bound to this, so far as I can tell, until death. And he's writing this letter to the CIA, essentially begging them to not release his name to the public. And here on number 11, his 11th point in this letter, he says, I am 75 years old, partly paralyzed on my left side from a stroke in December 1993. I was nearly fully rehabilitated when, in May 1994, I was hit by constant muscle spasms all up and down my left side. This rather rare condition, basically a sudden superhuman tightening of all the muscles, with after effects lasting until the next spasm, have made it increasingly difficult for me to stand up, walk, or even sit up for a very long. In a few days, when all the many medicines are here, we'll begin a 20-week homeopathic cure for the spasms under Dr. Schramm, a leading specialist here. I can't very well leave for 20 weeks.
So, yeah, that, even if he wasn't coerced in the beginning, at this point in time, if he did join the CIA willingly, they have him over a barrel. You know what I mean? Because if this information, as we said, leaks out, and they could have easily leaked it. We've been known to, back assassination attempts, assassinations that succeeded. We've been known to do all those things. We tried to kill Castro multiple times. We've tried to, we backed the assassination of Nojo Dinh Diem in Vietnam, who was a South Vietnamese president or leader of South Vietnam, who was basically our puppet, one of our puppets. We have been known to do those things. So they got him in a rock and a hard place at this point in time.
Yeah. And, I want to remind everybody we're doing double duty tonight. Thanks for joining us at All Things Unexplained. I'm Dr. Mounce. I'm joined by the one and only Smitty. And our double duty means after we finish with the musician asset, we're going to go off the air briefly, and we're going to come right back with a fascinating file we also discovered on a potential Russian assassin who might have been the one that killed JFK. And he might just have a connection to UFOs. So that will be coming up immediately within a few minutes after this episode. We'll go off there and we'll come right back. And Smitty, you brought up some things, and it made me realize and remember that we would be remiss if we didn't bring up the events of last night, events which may very well go down in history.
Yeah, and I think those events can be tied in to what we're talking about today, talking about this communism. When when we have nuclear, a country has nuclear capabilities, that gives us a good bit of pause as to whether or not, what are they going to do with the nuclear capabilities? And of course, we struck 3 nuclear facilities. Was it last night?
Last night.
Last
in
night.
Iran.
And so, in Iran, so we'll have to see what comes of that. I just don't know what the future holds, but it will go down in history books, which if I'm still alive, I'll be reading.
Yeah.
Maybe writing. So we'll see.
Maybe so. I mean, it's frightening, right? And at All Things Unexplained, we've been tracking a lot of this for a while. This news with the drones. We've had all these drone incursions over our military facilities. The drones in New Jersey. I think a lot of people have forgotten that one day one of our lawmakers went on television, and do you remember what he said? He said the drones were coming from an Iranian mothership off the coast somewhere.
That's exactly what he said.
I mean, tell me those aren't kind of bizarre, haunting words right now, considering last night we bombed Iran.
Yeah, I mean, that is really get your heart going a little faster to know that that's a strong possibility that he's correct, that those things did come from Iran. And so I don't know. Like I said, we'll have to see what the future holds.
Yeah, that's right. And also at All Things Unexplained, we've been tracking what's going on with Homeland Security, and a lot of frightening things have been happening with Homeland Security. A lot of this we've posted on our Twitter. If you haven't followed us on Twitter, check us out over there at AT Unexplained. You can find us in Twitter Spaces quite often. But Smitty, these last several Homeland Security reports, they've become more and more disturbing, and they've all kind of been centered around drones and drone warfare. I mean, warfare's changed, and that's why, yeah, with Iran, we do have to worry about them releasing a nuclear bomb. But it makes me curious what the end game is here, because I feel like we all know that if there were to be a World War III, if there were to be a major conflict involving us or China, for example, or Russia, we're not talking about nuclear weapons. We're talking about skies full of millions of drones.
Yeah, and how does that come? How do we combat that? That's the problem. It is a totally different game. I mean, for years we've been using drones, and other countries have, and people are sitting, hundreds, if not even 1,000 miles away, controlling these drones to drop bombs and missiles on targets, which blows my mind. Some of the new things that people can do, is unbelievable to what we used to be able to do. Pales in comparison to what our technology has brought us to at this point in time.
Yeah, that's right. I want to go back to this document here real quick, and I've got it on the screen. I'm going to read just a little bit. Like you were saying, Smitty, the guy, Walter Deutsch, I'm going to put it back on the screen, Deutsch. He was captured by the Americans in World War II, released, became a CIA asset. This is what All Things Unexplained has determined. And he goes by Ralph Iden, a code name in this document in the JFK files. Here, number 9, I've invested about $50,000 in my apartment. This was in 1995. In key money and improvements. If I leave, I will lose all or most of this. Our last move to Vienna cost me about $15,000 in sea freight and insurance. I will never get on my knees and ask to be made whole if you expose me, but I may report to the courts. I am a retired member of the Virginia Bar. Wow, you can really just pick up on his desperation here.
Very much so. I mean, it is pretty amazing I believe that he thinks that something is about to happen. What's about to happen, I'm not exactly sure, but of course he was going to try to be exposed, but for what purpose, I don't really know.
Yeah, and that brings up one of the bigger questions involving this document. And I want your take on this, Smitty. Well, first of all, we know the CIA has had a hand in psyops and using things like music, arts, the media to definitely influence other countries, if not our own. With us having discovered that a major music personality, TV personality, radio personality in Austria was a CIA asset for years, since the 40s. This letter was in 95. He'd passed away at 101. And only this year, I believe it was early this year, and only when these JFK files were released, that's the first time anybody ever knew he was a CIA asset. How many other famous musicians and television and radio and media personalities do you think have been involved with the CIA?
Oh, it could be countless. Because like I said, it allows them to have movement that normal, everyday Americans don't have. Because I'm not going to go on tour anywhere, you know.
Oh, you never know.
Well, I mean, I would go on a book tour, but not like a music tour. How about that? And by the way, my next book's coming out in January, I believe, or right after the first of the year. But it will be something that makes me wonder forever after reading this, who is on the CIA payroll. And like it said, in World War II, we used a major league catcher, Mo Berg, to spy on the Germans' ability to build the atomic bomb. So this is not the first instance where we have used celebrity to get intel and information that we thought would be, valuable to us as Americans. And who knows? It could be at the highest levels of entertainment. It could be at the highest levels of movie stars, music industry, or any of these other things that we uphold in our society.
Well, and one of the mysteries that we here at this show are closely connected with and we're fascinated by is, did the CIA write Wind of Change by the Scorpions?
Yes.
Right. We got to ask several people this question.
That was really an influential. Even the people in Russia will tell you that was used throughout Russia to spur change in that country, and the wall came down. I remember that the night the wall came down.
Oh yeah, and a lot of people in the United States know the Scorpions because of Here I Am, Rock Me Like a Hurricane, right?
Yeah. Every ball game that you go to, it's pretty much played.
But by far, their greatest hit, Wind of Change.
Oh yeah, I mean, they said, what was that we researched? They said people were making tapes of that and just passing it out to everybody they could pass it out to in Russia. In the USSR, they were just, when we used to do that in the 80s, make tapes and just distribute them to everybody, the 80s and the 90s.
I think you can say it's a safe bet that something like that is happening in Iran right now. Wouldn't you think so, Smitty?
Oh, I think so. I mean, I think that a lot of countries are not currently happy with some of the things that are going on there. I mean, for instance, when we went into Afghanistan, there were people dancing in the streets because the Taliban had now been put down. And, and once we left, they took right back over. And there are those who are anti-American, but there are many of it who support us too. You think about our culture is bigger than almost any culture. And I'm not saying that arrogant wise, but I don't watch foreign movies hardly. But every movie that comes out in America goes to a foreign theater. Every hit, Taylor Swift and all those musicians, they're listened to in different languages or in our English possibly in other countries. And I can't think. Now, my daughter likes K-pop bands, but I really cannot think about any group that didn't come from maybe England or somewhere. That
Australia, we got some Australians.
Well, some Australians.
AC/DC.
I mean, you know what I mean.
Oh yeah.
In general, our fast food, our technology, all those things are everywhere, all spread out through the world.
Yeah, and shout out to another podcast that is called Wind of Change. So I encourage everybody to check that out. It's a great podcast. All the episodes are devoted to pursuing that question. Did the CIA write Wind of Change by the Scorpions? And Smitty, I want to read this last thing from this letter from Walter Deutsch to the CIA. Let me pull his name up again here. Walter Deutsch. He simply goes by his code name in the letter, Ralph Iden. And this just is typical of him pleading. He's pleading in this letter, begging the CIA to not release his name to the public. If my name is exposed, I will obviously have to leave Vienna with the whole house full of furniture, pictures, library, clothing, etc., which I packed and paid to have moved here in 1983. Because of my stroke, I will be unable to do any packing, and the move will be very expensive. Where can I resettle in a 2,000 square foot apartment so conveniently located? And then this one really hits home, and it hits hard. My wife and I love living here for many reasons, and leaving would be a cruel and needless fate. I feel for Walter Deutsch. I feel like he found himself trapped in this situation. And like we were wondering, my goodness, what could they have had over his head to keep him locked into this assignment for life?
Here's my question too. Where in the world do you get a 2,000 square foot apartment? That is humongous.
Oh yeah, especially in Europe, right?
I mean, in New York, that would be like, I don't know, $40,000 a month probably. But that's a massive thing. But all jokes aside, he goes on to say in the next paragraph something to the effect that if this happens, he wants to go before a board, and he also wants to even go before the President of the United States. You know, he says that. He says, if you decide against us, I want to appear before the board and even the president when I happen to advise will pay my own way back to do so. And so he is adamant about not being exposed to the point where he is going to go to the highest person in the United States in the executive branch. So pretty amazing.
Which we don't know if that happened or not. This is just a file. Walter has already passed away. All Things Unexplained, through our own investigation, determined that this file, this letter from Ralph Iden, is actually Walter Deutsch, an Austrian music personality, but also a CIA asset. And Smitty, I want to ask you our final big question that we can ask about a lot of these files, because it makes you scratch your head. Why is this document in the JFK assassination files?
That's a good question. The only thing that I can come to a conclusion is that this man knew something, obviously, about the JFK assassination or some inner workings of it. And I mean, why would he be mentioned otherwise? There's actually, to me, there's no other possible explanation. Unless he knew something about the assassination, there's no other reason that he should be mentioned. That would be like me working in one place and the place I don't work in's mentioning my name all the time. Well, I'm not even there. So why would they mention my name? Doesn't make sense. So something, what's your opinion?
Yeah, that's a good question. I just feel like, these JFK files, everywhere you look, it's a fake identity here, a fake storefront here. You've got John Brown with a fake driver's license, tax returns, everything, working at Bob's hardware store on Main Street, which actually repairs people's televisions, but is also a front for the CIA. It makes you feel like in the 60s reality, there was no reality, at least not what people perceived as reality. Certainly wasn't reality. By the way, Smitty, we're also releasing tomorrow a video and on the audio platforms, and All Things Unexplained delve into the JFK files that uncovered an arranged marriage by the CIA. And so people can check that out, to premiering tomorrow. We discovered that the CIA literally arranged a marriage so that the husband could get in with the wife, who was a known communist, so that he could get into with her and her friends. And then at some point they split up, and in the CIA file, it literally says, hey, we're going to encourage them to have relations again because we want to get back, on the inside here with her communist friends. So I just think, why is this document in the JFK assassination files? I just think that it is a rabbit hole. It's such a complex story that there's just no way to really know what's happening.
And by the way, let's clarify that the marriage was a one-sided thing. This woman believed that this man loved her and married this man. And it literally, if you've ever watched the show Blacklist, and I don't go by television shows much, the same exact thing happens. So instead of it being fictitious like it was in the Blacklist, this is legitimate, real life. Who is in the CIA, who's not, who's a communist, who's not, and that just blows my mind. That so many people were living this lie, and their friends and family believe they were one person, they were totally someone else. Not even the same name. On a huge amount of these people. Yeah.
Well, and there's a phenomenon that happens in ufology. It tends to happen with whistleblowers, where Bob Lazar, for example, sometimes people might find what they believe to be an error in his story. And because of that error in his story, they cast out his entire story as erroneous and false. But I just think that's a big mistake, because even in the 60s, like with the guy that had the arranged marriage, right? Like if you started digging into that guy, do you know how much erroneous stuff you would find? But yet, he was living a life. Certainly everything he would say would not be a lie, but yet, what is a lie, right? Like if he works at John's hardware store on Main Street, right, and he files a tax return under his fake name, was he really working at the hardware store? Did he ever really help anybody? Does anything he say matter? It's just too complex of a situation to say, well, I found this one erroneous piece of data. Everything they say is erroneous.
I agree. It's weird. He was two people at one time. And he chose who to show which person to.
Well, and just think how complicated that would be. How complicated it would be. That's why anything's possible. How complicated would it be to literally arrange two people getting together, falling in love, getting married. We're talking children. We're talking weddings. Keeping up with those people. Like, how would you like to be the dude that worked for the CIA and the dude that's in the arranged marriage? He's like part of your assignment, you know, like, I got to wake up and check on so-and-so and see how things are going.
Yeah. And he has to worry about not blowing that man's cover. You know, how does that work out? So
That's right. Well, that episode is going to premiere tomorrow on all audio and video platforms. So Smitty and I, we're going to about to wrap up this episode. We're going to take a short break. It's 9:43. We ran a little long, but we're going to be right back after this in a few minutes to talk about the Russian scientist assassin. So you're not going to want to miss that. So on behalf of Smitty, thanks for joining us for the musician, CIA asset, and All Things Unexplained exclusive look into the JFK files. We'll be back in just a few moments, live on LinkedIn, YouTube, and X. So on behalf of Smitty, well, why don't you take us out, Smitty?
be happy, be strange, listen to All Things Unexplained. Thanks for tuning in tonight.
That's right. Thanks, everybody.
I am here to discuss the so-called flying saucers.
We know now that in the early years of the 20th century, this world was being watched closely by intelligences greater than man's.
Did the CIA write Wind of Change by the Scorpions?
As humans busied themselves about the various concerns, they were scrutinized and studied.
Dr. Loeb, what percentage chance do you give it that you have indeed uncovered extraterrestrial or non-human technology?
With infinite complacence, people went about their affairs, yet across an immense ethereal gulf, intellects vast and unsympathetic threw their plans against us.
All of a sudden, a stick out of nowhere landed right in front of us, and there was no tree, nothing overhead. Something threw it at us.
Yeah. What's your hot take on Travis Taylor?
I've got an exclusive for you guys if you want it about the Alaska.
We do.
Okay.
Dr. Taylor was revealed to be the chief scientist of the UAP task force with the Pentagon.
All Things Unexplained.
So some of that, I think, sir, we'll save for closed session.